Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you are doing well. Welcome to the third day of the International Congress about marine animal rights, specifically those who are in captivity. I am Dalila Luis, the presenter of DAM, Derechos Animales Marinos, Marine Animal Rights, an organization made up of several activist groups in Argentina. We have joined the experience, strength, and energy of Proyecto Galgo Argentina, activistas animalistas de la costa, independent activists, Paula, Gerardo, and Carla, and Equipo Judicial Sandra. With the purpose of updating and gathering in a Spanish-speaking site information on marine animals oriented to their consideration and recognition as subject of law, the problem of their captivity and the possibility of the rehabilitation of the individuals. We want to make this public knowledge so that in the near future the bill to ban shows with marine animals will have the full support of the Argentine community for its approval. Today we have two very special guests who I will be presenting in a few minutes. But first, I am so glad to introduce you to Sandra's judicial team and Sandra history.
Sandra, a 33-year-old orangutan that was legally ruled to not be an animal but a non-human person with rights, will leave Buenos Aires and head to a sanctuary in Florida that is much better suited to her needs. She was born in a zoo in Germany, was moved to Argentina 25 years ago and has lived most of her life in a basketball court-sized cell in Buenos Aires. The conditions she'd been kept in sparked protests from animal rights groups and led to a landmark court ruling in 2014 that she was entitled to some of the legal rights enjoyed by humans.
Era consciente de que yo tenía que transmitir algo nuevo para la sociedad. Y lo que le quería decir a la sociedad es que los animales son seres sintientes y que son sujetos de derechos. Y que ese primer derecho que tienen es la obligación nuestra de respeto hacia ellos. De respeto por la dignidad, por la vida. Estamos proclamando la vida como un bien jurídico supremo. Nunca le vamos a poder restituir su dignidad como tal, nunca. Eso ya desde su nacimiento, ¿no? Fue un hecho humano, nació en un zoológico en Alemania. Entonces, nunca lo vamos a poder reparar como seres humanos hacia ella, pero vamos a hacer de que sea el resto de su existencia sea lo más decoroso posible.
An orangutan held in an Argentine zoo can now be freed and transferred to a sanctuary after a court recognised the ape as a non-human person unlawfully deprived of its freedom. Animal rights campaigners filed a habeas corpus petition in November, a document normally used to challenge the legality of a person's imprisonment, all on behalf of Sandra, a 29-year-old orangutan at the zoo. Now, in a landmark case that could pave the way for more lawsuits, the Association of Officials and Lawyers for Animal Rights argued the ape had sufficient cognitive functions and should not be treated as an object. The court agreed Sandra, who was born into captivity in Germany before being transferred to Argentina 2 decades ago, deserved the basic rights of a non-human person. He explained staff had been working towards transferring her for more than a year. Orangutan is a word from the Malay and Indonesian languages that means forest man. They are calm, solitary animals which come together only to mate and care for their young.
I hear the drizzle of the rain, like a memory it falls, soft and warm, continuing.
Now the judge Elena Liberatori have some words for us.
Hola, ¿se me escucha ahora sí?
Perfecto.
Bueno. Buenas noches, buenas tardes. Gracias por estar aquí. Y reconozco que recién hoy, y en ocasión de este encuentro, he conocido a Howard Garrett a través de la página hoy de web Orca Aware y de su trayectoria de lucha por la liberación de los animales marinos en cautiverio. Estamos ante la naturalización de esos espectáculos degradantes que ocurren en esos lugares de cautiverio que van desde los zoológicos a los oceanarios. Hay un hilo conductor, sean animales de agua, tierra, no importa. El ser humano los pone en una jaula o en un estanque y a cobrar entradas. Me recuerda esto la emblemática canción de la película Cabaret en 1972, cuando Liza Minnelli y Joel Grey cantan Money, 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 money makes the world go around. That clinking, clanking sound can make the world go round. La orca Lolita, me repugna en realidad el nombre afectuoso, que ayuda a vender mejor el negocio de su sufrimiento. Lolita fue raptada de su familia en agosto del año 70 y llevada un mes después al Miami Sea Aquarium. Sandra, la orangutana sin patria, con nombre de mujer humana, nació directamente en cautiverio. Su vida es el resultado de la manipulación humana, con espermas y óvulos negociados de progenitores en cautiverio, al punto de que los humanos hicieron de ella un ser híbrido, ni de Sumatra ni de Borneo, de ambas a la vez, porque mamá y papá humanos mezclaron los frasquitos para que ella naciera y fuera comercializada. Su vida, un negocio. Money, money, money. La ignorancia, la crueldad, el dinero, la cosificación que está establecida en la ley en nuestro país. Un concepto, la cosificación, que sirve de fundamento y a modo de justificación para la utilidad, la explotación y la violencia hacia los animales. Pero atención, esto, vuelvo a repetir, está en la ley vigente de mi país. O sea, la cosificación de un ser sintiente, o sea, sintiencia que padece los tratos crueles que les son infligidos. La naturalización, el otro soporte cultural y educativo de la industria de la crueldad hacia los animales. Si se hizo siempre, si nos preguntásemos acaso, ¿y esto por qué es así?
Doctora, se le silenció.
Activar audio. Sí. Perdón, no sé hasta dónde llegué, pero vamos a retomar.
¿Quedó en esto acaso es así? Perdón.
Sí, Estoy ahí justamente. La naturalización, decía, el otro soporte cultural y educativo de la industria de la crueldad, junto con la cosificación que decíamos estaba en la ley. Entonces, la cultura, la educación, el dinero y los edulcorantes a modo Disney, para que no veamos la clase de vínculo que hemos construido con los animales no humanos. No todo está perdido aún, espero. En los años 70 comenzó el cautiverio de Lolita. A la par, Jacques Derrida en Francia nos trajo ese concepto de la deconstrucción. Y Konrad Lorenz fundaba la etología. Hoy día, el biólogo holandés, por ejemplo, Frans de Waal, demuestra que los animales tienen sentido moral, reciprocidad, solidaridad. ¿Acaso el martirio de Lolita durante 52 años no ha producido ya suficiente dinero sucio por su sufrimiento? Basta ya que le devuelvan su vida, lo que queda de ella. Gracias.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Juan Martín Miraldo, and I will be translating for the Sandra Judiciary team. Judge Elena Liberatori said, "Good evening. I acknowledge that today and on the occasion of this meeting, I met Howard Garrett through the Orca Aware website and his career in the struggle for the liberation of marine animals in captivity. We are facing the naturalization of these degrading spectacles that occur in those places of captivity that range from zoos to oceanariums and aquariums. There is a common thread whether they are water, land, or air animals. It does not matter. The human beings put them in a cage or in a pond and charge for the tickets. It reminds me of the iconic song from the 1972 movie Cabaret with Liza Minnelli and Joel Grey. Money makes the world go around. That clinking, clanking sound can make the world go around. The Orca Lolita, I hate that supposedly affectionate name because it helps to sell the business of her suffering better, was kidnapped from her family back in August 1970 and taken a month later to the Miami Sea Aquarium. Sandra, the orangutan, without a country with the name of without a country and with the name of a human woman, who was born directly in captivity. Her life is the result of human manipulation, with sperm and eggs traded from parents in captivity to the point that humans made her a hybrid being, not even from Sumatra, nor from Borneo, from both at the same time, just because human mom and dad mixed the vials so that she was born and marketed her life a business. Money, money, money. Ignorance, cruelty, money, objectification established in the civil code of my country. Objectification is a concept that serves as a foundation and as a justification for the utility, exploitation, and violence towards animals. But attention, I repeat, this is in our law that's in my country. The objectification of a sentient being that it suffers the cruel treatment to which it is subject. Naturalization is the other cultural and educational support of the animal cruelty industry. If it was always done, if we don't ask ourselves, and why this is so. In short, a culture, an education, money, and sweeteners on a Disney way, so that we do not see the kind of bond that we have built with non-human animals. And yet, all is not lost, or at least I like to hope so. Back in the 70s, Lolita's captivity began at the same time that Jacques Derrida in France brought us the concept of deconstruction, and Konrad Lorenz founded ethology. Today, the Dutch biologist Frans de Waal demonstrates that animals have moral sense of reciprocity and solidarity. Perhaps 52 years of Lolita's martyrdom has not yet produced enough dirty money for her suffering. Enough already. Give her life back, what remains of it at least.
Thank you so much. Now, Dr. María José Fernández from Sandra Judicial Team.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Esperen que voy a compartir pantalla. Bueno, hola, soy María José Fernández, abogada, integro el equipo judicial Sandra, y hoy les voy a hablar y mencionar brevemente algunos puntos particulares del eje legal del caso de Sandra, y luego me referiré a la teoría de la apreciación estética de los animales marinos en cautiverio, desarrollada por la filósofa Marta Tafalla. En primer lugar, la sentencia de Sandra fue dictada el 21 de octubre de 2015, fue la primera sentencia en reconocer a un animal judicialmente como persona no humana. En ella Sandra fue tomada como un ser sintiente, que esta es una parte muy importante de la sentencia, a quien correspondía reconocerle su derecho a una vida digna y a una mejor calidad de vida que la que tenía en el zoológico de Buenos Aires, donde estaba en aquel momento. A partir de la sentencia y luego de evaluar el mejor lugar para ella, que tardamos bastante porque fue una averiguación muy detallada de cuál era el mejor lugar para ella, el 26 de septiembre de 2019 fue trasladada al Center for Great Apes en Florida, Estados Unidos, donde hoy vive en semilibertad con la posibilidad de realizar sus conductas típicas de la especie en un hábitat adecuado y puede compartir su vida junto a Jethro, otro orangután. Otro aspecto importante de esta sentencia es que fue tomada como antecedente jurisprudencial en muchos casos que le precedieron para declarar a otros animales como sujetos de derechos, como en el caso de las elefantas Pocha y Guillermina, que estaban en el zoológico de Mendoza, en Argentina, y que fueron recientemente trasladadas al santuario en Brasil. También el mono coco, el mono caraya coco, el elefante cabán en Pakistán, y también otros más, como por ejemplo, que no están en la pantalla, pero el león kibú en Costa Rica y el caso de la mona choronga estrellita de Ecuador, entre otros. Bueno, ahora pasando al segundo eje de mi presentación, como ya les dije, voy a traer algunas nociones de la teoría de apreciación estética desarrollada por la filósofa Marta Tafalla de la Universidad de Barcelona. Ella observa que en todos los casos de los animales en cautiverio, que son exhibidos tanto en zoológicos, acuarios, oceanarios, tienen en común un denominador, que existe una inmoralidad en dicha explotación que no radica solamente en el sufrimiento cada vez que son maltratados, sino en que pierden completamente sus vidas al ser obligados a entregar su cuerpo, su tiempo y su energía para servir a fines humanos. Es decir, no son considerados como seres que sienten por sí mismos, poseedores de un valor intrínseco, sino que son reducidos a un valor instrumental impuesto por los seres humanos según los intereses y caprichos del ser humano. Dentro de esta instrumentalización encontramos lo que Tafalla denomina instrumentalización estética, que reduce a los animales a meros ornamentos u objetos. La apreciación estética que se da ahí es una apreciación superficial que concibe a los animales como herramientas destinadas a producir placer sensorial. Advertimos que los acuarios, entonces, se encuentran dentro de este primer tipo de instrumentación estética, en tanto reducen a los animales en meros ornamentos, prácticas a través de las cuales se lucra con un suculento negocio, y las víctimas, los animales marinos, viven en espacios diminutos, lejos de sus ecosistemas a los que pertenecen, sin poder desarrollar sus conductas naturales y a merced de sus dueños, que pueden tratarlos como quieran, sin que exista supervisión alguna de parte del Estado. La estética de estos acuarios también cabe mencionar que son una mezcla de parque de atracciones, museo interactivo y centro comercial, diseñado especialmente para niños, y no solo encierra a una gran cantidad de animales, sino que estimulan a los visitantes a tener el deseo de tener su propia colección, recordando que el comercio ilegal de especies silvestres o salvajes está íntimamente relacionado con el narcotráfico y el tráfico de armas, y que a menudo está realizado por las mismas mafias. Esta concepción entonces de los animales como adornos u objetos también se ve reforzada por una cantidad de objetos que incluyen representaciones de animales con el mismo fin ornamental. Muñecos, peluches, joyas, como vemos en pantalla, hasta un silbato de entrenador. Y el problema es que en nuestra sociedad predominen estas representaciones insustanciales, es que no hacen más que justificar la opresión real hacia los demás animales. Otro tipo de instrumentación que señala Tafalia es una estetización del dominio. La explotación no solo se impone por la fuerza hacia los animales y se justifica a través de discursos, sino que se envuelve en una estética que pretende embellecerla, como por ejemplo la música que se pone en los shows, las historias que se narran durante el show, los fondos escenográficos de las piletas que simulan ser hábitats naturales. La consecuencia de mostrar a los animales no como son, es que estamos olvidando cómo son verdaderamente. Al verlos continuamente explotados, encerrados, obedeciendo órdenes, nos cuesta más imaginarlos libres, viviendo sus vidas, y para ellos mismos, una vida que es para ellos, en los ecosistemas a los que pertenecen, y olvidamos que estos animales tienen derecho a su libertad, a realizar conductas naturales, a su forma de vivir, que tienen enormes capacidades cognitivas, emocionales y comunicativas, y perdemos la capacidad nuestra de apreciarlos de manera profunda. Va a decir Marta Tafalia que se da una paradoja estética, que consiste en que los seres humanos hayan placer al contemplar un animal a pesar de sus condiciones de exhibición le causen un daño. Para sentir el placer de contemplar un animal, los humanos le causan dolor y contemplan al animal sin percatarse de su sufrimiento. Como consecuencia del cautiverio y la explotación de los animales marinos, estos pierden su autonomía e identidad. En muchos casos los acuarios, además de ofrecer que el público los pueda ver y sacar fotografías, también ofrecen interactuar con los animales, nadar con ellos, tocarlos, darles de comer, lo que aumenta los ingresos económicos para estas empresas, pero además lo hacen a costa de estos animales y les generan un aumento de presión y estrés que se transforma en estrés crónico y frustración permanente, y es un auténtico infierno para estos animales. Los acuarios se defienden argumentando que realizan tareas de conservación, que hacen educación y que hacen investigación. Sin embargo, esto es una trampa, ya que la única manera de conservar a las especies es conservarlas en sus ecosistemas, y por ello los acuarios no pueden cumplir con esta función real de conservación. Lo mismo sucede con la educación y la investigación. No es educación, atento que los animales en cautiverio ya no exhiben sus conductas naturales, y porque una pileta o una jaula no puede educar en el valor de la libertad. En cuanto a la investigación, dicen que realizan los acuarios, es una investigación que la hacen para ellos mismos y no al servicio del animal, y sería completamente innecesaria si no existieran los acuarios. La única investigación con sentido es la que se realiza en el medio natural. Esta teoría sostiene entonces que esta paradoja solo es posible porque los seres humanos no ven al animal como tal, sino que lo ven como su apariencia. Esta apreciación superficial tiene otra cara, que es la incapacidad de revelar la belleza más profunda de los animales, es decir, contemplarlos de manera respetuosa como seres vivos que interactúan con sus congéneres, sus conductas y cualidades sensoriales, y valorarlos con una larga lista de cualidades estéticas. A modo de conclusión, podemos sostener que no existe justificación moral, estética, legal ni científica de la actividad de explotación en los acuarios. En tanto, encierran a los animales y les causan daños físicos, psíquicos y emocionales, les roban su libertad y también a nosotros la posibilidad de experiencias estéticas profundas. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Okay. Hello, I am María José Fernández, lawyer. I am a member of Sandra Judiciary Team, and today I am going to briefly mention the main points of the orangutan Sandra's ruling, and then I will refer to the aesthetic appreciation of marine animals in captivity. Sandra's ruling of October 21st, 2015 was the first to legally recognize an animal as a non-human person. Sandra was taken into account as a sentient being whose right to a dignified life and a better quality of life should be recognized than the one she had in captivity at the Buenos Aires Zoo. After evaluating the best place for her, Sandra was transferred on September 26th, 2019 to the Center for Great Apes in Florida, USA, where today she lives in semi-liberty with the possibility of carrying out the typical behaviors of her species in a suitable habitat and shares his life with Jethro, another orangutan. Another important aspect of Sandra's case ruling is that it was taken as a jurisprudential precedent in many cases that wanted to declare animals as subject of rights, such as the cases of elephants Pocha and Guillermina from the Mendoza Zoo in Argentina, both declared non-human persons and transferred to a sanctuary in Brazil, the case of the elephant Caban in Pakistan, the case of the lion Kibu in Costa Rica, or the case of the Choronga monkey Estrellita in Ecuador, among many others. Now, moving on to the second point of this lecture, I would like to bring some notions of the theory of aesthetic appreciation of animals from the philosopher Marta Tafalla. We observe that in all cases of captive animals, that are exhibited in zoos, aquariums, oceanariums, the most common denominator is that there is an immorality, insane exploitation that does not lie only in the suffering each time they are mistreated, but also in the fact that they completely lose their lives, being forced to give up their bodies, their time, and their energy to serve human ends. They are not considered as beings that exist for themselves, holders of an intrinsic value, but reduced to an instrumental value imposed by human beings according to their interests and whims. Within this instrumentalization, we find what Marta Tafalla calls aesthetic instrumentalization, which reduces animals to mere ornaments. The aesthetic appreciation that occurs there is a superficial appreciation that conceives animals as tools destined to produce sensory pleasure. We note that aquariums, dolphinariums, are among the first type of aesthetic instrumentation, which consists of reducing animals into mere ornaments, practices through which they profit from a lucrative business. The marine animals' victims live in tiny spaces, far from the ecosystems they belong to, without being able to develop their natural behaviors and at the mercy of their owners, who can treat them as they want without any supervision. The aesthetic of these aquariums is a mixture of an amusement park, an interactive museum, and a shopping center, specially designed for children. And they not only contain many animals, but also stimulate the desire of visitors to have their own collection. Let's not forget that illegal trade in wildlife is closely related to drugs and arms trafficking that is often carried out by the same mafias. This conception of animals as ornaments is reinforced by several objects that include representation of animals with the same ornamental purpose: dolls, stuffed animals, jewelry, clothing, and many other objects intended for children. And the problem is that in our society, these unsubstantial representations predominate is that they do nothing more than justify the real oppression towards other animals. Another type of aesthetic instrumentalization that we see in aquariums consists of what Tafalla calls an aestheticization of the domain. Exploitation is not only imposed by force and justified with speeches, but rather it is wrapped in an aesthetic that seeks to embellish, such as the music they play, the stories they tell during the show, the backgrounds or scenery of the pools that they simulate to be natural habitats, etc. The consequences of showing animals as they are not is that we are forgetting what they are like. Seeing them continually exploited, locked up, obeying orders, it is increasingly difficult for us to imagine them free, living their lives by and for themselves in the ecosystems to which they belong. We forget that these animals have the right to their freedom, to carry out their natural behaviors, their way of living, their cognitive, emotional, and communicative capacities, and we lose the ability to deeply appreciate them. There is an aesthetic paradox that human beings find pleasure in looking at an animal, even though the animal displays conditions cause harm to them. To feel the pleasure of looking at an animal, human cause pain and look at the animal unaware of its suffering. As a consequence of the captivity and exploitation of marine animals, they lose their autonomy and identity. In many cases, aquariums offers the public, in addition to photography and seeing the animals do tricks that they would not do in their natural habitat, but also to interact with them, touch them, feed them, swim with them, what increases the economic income for these companies at the expense of the pressure and stress on the animals that spend more and more hours of the day exposed to people and noise, which plunges them into a state of chronic stress and permanent frustration, a real hell. Aquariums defend themselves by arguing that they carry out conservation, education, and research tasks, but it is a trap, since the only way to conserve species is to conserve them in their ecosystems, and therefore aquariums cannot fulfill a real conservation function. This same happens with the arguments of education and research. It is not education, considering that animals in captivity no longer exhibit their natural behaviors, and because a pool or a cage cannot educate in the value of freedom. As for the research that aquariums claim to do, it is about studying how to keep animals in captivity, which is a vicious cycle. The research they carry out is at the service of the aquariums themselves and not of the animals, and would be completely unnecessary if there were no aquariums. The only research that makes sense is that which is carried out in the natural environment. This paradox is only possible because human beings do not see the animal as such, but only its appearance. This superficial appreciation has another face, which is the inability to reveal the deepest beauty of animals, contemplate them in their ecosystems in a respectful way as living beings that interact with their kin, their behaviors and sensory qualities, and value them with a long list of aesthetic qualities. In conclusion, there is no moral, aesthetic, legal, or a scientific justification for aquariums. While they confine animals and cause them physical, psychological, and emotional harm, they rob them of their freedom and prevents us from the possibility of profound aesthetic experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Martín. Now, Guaimas from Sandra Judicial Team.
Hola, buenas tardes, casi noches acá en Argentina. Mi nombre es Lucía Guaimas, yo soy antropóloga e integro el equipo judicial Sandra. Aquí intentaré dar cuenta de los aspectos antropológicos que se expresaron en la sentencia del caso Sandra. En la sentencia se analizó el hecho de que todo modo de clasificar y categorizar el mundo es una construcción social. Los modos de clasificación responden a una manera particular de apropiarse de la realidad, lo que nos lleva a pensar la cuestión animal y nuestra relación con Sandra específicamente y con todos los animales no humanos en general. Ahora les voy a compartir una imagen que da cuenta de cómo nos podemos desarmar y de esta manera ver de qué modo nos entendemos y podemos deconstruir. Ahí en ese hombrecito podemos dar cuenta de esto, ¿no? La deconstrucción, desarmarnos y pensar las cosas de otra manera. Lejos de ser naturales y estáticas, los modos en que vemos y pensamos, es decir, que clasificamos lo que nos rodea, son esencialmente dinámicos y cambiantes, según el contexto social en que se han generado. Las modificaciones que puedan sufrir determinados modos de ver y pensar a lo largo de un periodo histórico, y el hecho de que una misma categoría pueda ser pensada de diferentes maneras en un mismo periodo, según diferentes sociedades o grupos sociales, son signos precisamente de su carácter social. Dando cuenta de esto, mencionaremos aquí que otra manera de relacionarnos con nuestro entorno y los seres que lo habitan es posible. A través de trabajos de numerosos antropólogos se ha dado cuenta de la relación que tienen algunos pueblos originarios con el ambiente y los seres que los rodean. Y esto no es una relación de sometimiento o exterminio. Y aún transformando de modo duradero el entorno, estas etnias no alteran sus principios de funcionamiento ni sus condiciones de reproducción. Las condiciones de reproducción y principio de funcionamiento del ambiente que los rodea. Con esto no queremos idealizar o esencializar los modos de vida de algunas etnias, sino dar cuenta simplemente de que otras maneras de desarrollar la vida y relacionarnos con el ambiente son posibles. Jacques Derrida, como mencionó la doctora Liberatoria al principio, desarrolló la noción de deconstrucción. Derrida sostiene que no hay nada por fuera del texto, es decir, que todo está mediado por el lenguaje. Por lo tanto, es una construcción humana. Nada hay fuera del texto, y si lo hay, no puede ser nada para las formas de conocimiento nuestras. Las imágenes que podemos ver en pantalla del árbol y la cebra, formadas por palabras, puede ser una forma más visual de hacernos una imagen mental y entender esta noción. Derrida señala que todo sistema de derecho es deconstruible. Se deconstruye cuando mostramos sus intereses, sus decisiones y arbitrariedades. Para terminar, diré algo que se señaló en la sentencia del caso Sandra. El derecho, como toda categoría y modo de clasificar y ordenar la vida cotidiana, es una construcción social. Partiendo de esta base, sostenemos que quienes deben ser los beneficiarios de ciertos derechos y quienes no, es un aspecto que puede ser modificado. De esta manera, entender y darse cuenta que los modos de categorizar y clasificar encierran relaciones de poder específicas, que a su vez pueden provocar relaciones de desigualdad, dominación y sometimiento de seres vivientes, nos permitirá la posibilidad de cambiar ciertos modos de ver y actuar sobre nuestra vida cotidiana y sobre la vida de otros humanos y no humanos. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucía Guaimas. I am an anthropologist. I am a member of the Sandra judiciary team. Here I will try to account for the anthropological aspects that we are expressed in the ruling of Sandra's case. The decision analyzed the fact that every way of classifying and categorizing the world is a social construction. The classification modes responds to a particular way of appropriating reality, which led us to rethink the animal issues and our relationship with Sandra specifically, and with all non-human animals in general. Far from being natural and static, the ways in which we see and think, that is, the way we classify what surrounds us, are essentially dynamic and change according to the social context in which they have been generated. The modifications that certain ways of seeing and thinking may undergo throughout a historical period, and the fact that the same category may be thought of differently in the same period according to different societies and social groups, are signs precisely of its social character. Realizing this, we will mention here that another way of relating to our environment and the beings that inhabit it it's possible. Through the work of numerous anthropologists, it has been realized that the relationship that some native people have with the environment and the beings that surround them, it's not a relationship of submission or extermination. While lastingly transforming the environment, they do not alter its operating principles or its reproduction conditions. With this, we do not want to idealize or essentialize the ways of life of some ethnic groups, but to realize that other ways of developing life and relating to the environment are possible. Jacques Derrida developed the notion of deconstruction. Derrida maintains that there is nothing outside the text. That is not to say that everything it is mediated by language, therefore it is a human construction. There is nothing outside the text, and if there is, it cannot be anything from our forms of knowledge. These were the pictures of the tree and the zebra that we showed earlier, built up by words. Derrida points out that every system of law is deconstructible. It deconstructs when we show their interests, decisions, and arbitrariness. To finish, I will say something that was pointed out in the ruling. The law, like any category and way of classifying and ordering their daily life, it's a social construction. Starting from its base, we maintain that who should be the beneficiaries of certain rights and who should not. It's an aspect that can be modified. In this way, understanding and realizing that ways of categorizing and classifying enclose specific power relationships, which in turn can cause relationships of inequality, domination, and submission of living beings, will allow us the possibility of changing certain ways of seeing and acting on our daily lives and about the lives of other humans and non-human beings. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the translation, Juan Martín. And now, Noelia Villarino from Sandra Judiciary Team.
Buenas noches, yo soy Noelia Villarino, secretaria a cargo del expediente del caso Sandra. Hoy voy a hacer un breve comentario sobre la relevancia científica en el caso. Como quizás ya sepan, la sentencia de la doctora Liberatori dispuso que el gobierno de la ciudad de Buenos Aires, de quien dependía el ecoparque, donde se alojaba Sandra, debía garantizarle el mayor bienestar posible. Poder determinar qué significaba el mayor bienestar posible para Sandra fue un trabajo arduo porque cada uno de los involucrados en el expediente interpretaba el concepto de manera distinta. Y así se generó la pregunta, ¿Sandra debe viajar? ¿Lo necesita? Para responderla, la jueza recurrió a los profesionales técnicos, doctores Ferrari y Aldo Giudice, quienes realizaron una extensa observación de Sandra en el ecoparque. Ellos tomaron indicadores de comportamiento para determinar las necesidades de Sandra, así observaron y registraron cuánto tiempo dedicaba a sus actividades, al enriquecimiento, a la alimentación, a reposar, a dormir, etc. Los indicadores de comportamiento son ítems objetivos que permiten comparar la conducta de un individuo con las de otro de su misma especie, género y edad. Con sus conclusiones, se pudo determinar que Sandra necesitaba una mejora en su calidad de vida, que le permitiera realizar las conductas propias de su especie, que por el ámbito en el cual vivía en el ecoparque tenía vedadas. ¿Y por qué necesitaba esa mejora? ¿Acaso los profesionales del ecoparque no eran cuidadosos y diligentes? ¿No se alimentaba adecuadamente? Nada más alejado de la realidad. Pero aún con ese compromiso y atención hacia nuestra querida orangutana, no podían darle todo lo que ella necesitaba. Entonces se concluyó que el viaje de Sandra a un destino que permitiera desarrollar esas conductas típicas era necesario, es decir, formaba parte del concepto mayor bienestar posible. Y aquí retomo esta parte del aprendizaje de esta causa para pensar en la situación de la fauna marina en cautiverio que nos convoca. El sufrimiento que puede padecer un animal no humano no siempre debe asociarse con el dolor o el maltrato físicos. Un control veterinario de rutina, como el chequeo del médico clínico, no siempre será suficiente para determinar si hay sufrimiento. No es una opinión ni una postura subjetiva, hay herramientas científicas para ello, como la toma de indicadores de comportamiento. Porque según hemos aprendido, el concepto de animal excede la definición biológica que podemos construir. Un animal es sus conductas. ¿Cuáles? Las propias de su especie, no las que podamos producir mediante el entrenamiento ni las adaptaciones a ámbitos reducidos y desprovistos de los elementos que encontrarían en sus lugares de origen. Estos animales marinos en vida silvestre son mayoritariamente depredadores de gran alcance, recorren muchas millas por día, por ejemplo, los cetáceos se estima que recorren entre 40 y 100 millas, y además, en general, son animales sociales que viven en pequeñas manadas o tribus. En cautiverio, las condiciones en las que se encuentran confinados, en pequeños estanques estériles de hormigón, rellenos con agua químicamente tratada, son especialmente crueles, privados de sus congéneres, de un entorno adecuado y con espacios extremadamente reducidos para sus necesidades. Tan lejos de las condiciones que tendrían en libertad y vedados de desarrollar las conductas de su especie, solo podemos concluir que sufren. Y si ese sufrimiento se debe a la situación en la que los seres humanos los hemos colocado, no puede ser otra cosa que maltrato. Da cuenta de ello, a modo de ejemplo, un informe de National Geographic del 2019 que estimó que las orcas en estado silvestre viven entre 50 y 80 años. No obstante, solo unas pocas orcas atrapadas en la naturaleza y mantenidas cautivas han superado los 30, y ninguna nacida en cautiverio lo ha conseguido. La mayoría de ellas desarrolla estereotipos, que son acciones repetidas sin ninguna función, que pueden llegar a la automutilación. Esta crueldad sin justificación debe detenerse. Es nuestra obligación como animales humanos reparar el daño generado y cuando ello no es posible, mitigarlo al máximo para convivir en un mundo donde quepamos todos, un mundo menos cruel. Muchas gracias.
Good evening. My name is Noelia Villarino. I am a lawyer, member of the Sandra judiciary team, and I was in charge of the case during its journey through the courthouse. Today, I am going to make a brief comment on the scientific relevance of the Sandra case. As you may already know, Judge Liberatori's ruling established that the government of the city of Buenos Aires, from which the Eco Parque was where Sandra was staying, had to guarantee her the greatest possible well-being. Being able to determine what greatest possible well-being meant for Sandra was hard work because each party and the experts involved in the case interpreted the concept in a different way. Thus, a few questions actually took shape. Should Sandra travel? Does she really needs it? To answer them, the judge turned to technical professionals, PhDs Ricardo Ferrari and Aldo Giudice, who made an extensive observation of Sandra at the Eco Park. They took behavioral indicators to determine Sandra's needs, observing and recording how much time she spent on her activities, such as enrichment, feeding, resting, sleeping, etc. Behavioral indicators are objective items that allow the behavior of an individual to be compared with that of another of the same species, gender, and age. With their conclusions, it was possible to determine that Sandra needed an improvement in her quality of life that would allow her to carry out the behavioral typicals of her species, which, due to the area in which she lived in the eco park, was impossible. And why did she need such an upgrade? Were the professionals at the eco park not careful or diligent enough? She was not fed properly. Nothing could be further from the truth. But even with that commitment and attention to our beloved orangutan, they couldn't give her everything she needed. So it was concluded that Sandra's trip to a destination that allowed her to develop these typical behaviors of her species was necessary. That is, it was part of the concept of greatest possible well-being. And here I return to part of the learning of this case to think about the situation of the marine fauna in captivity that summons us today. The suffering that a non-human animal may experience must not always be associated with physical pain or abuse. A routine veterinary checkup, such as a routine medical exam, will not always be enough to determine if there is distress. It is not an option or a subjective position. There are scientific tools for it, such as taking behavioral indicators. Because as we already learned, the concept of animal exceeds the biological definition that we can build. An animal is its behaviors. Which ones? Those typical of their species, not those that we can produce through training, nor the adaptations to reduced environments and devoid of the elements that they would find in their places of origin. These marine animals in the wild are mostly powerful predators. They travel many miles per day. For example, cetaceans are estimated between 40 and 100 miles, and are also generally social animals that live in small herds or tribes. In captivity, the conditions in which they are confined in a small sterile concrete ponds filled with chemically treated water are especially cruel. Deprived of their fellow creatures in an inadequate environment with extreme limited spaces for their needs. So far from the conditions that they would have in freedom and prohibited from developing the behaviors of their species, we can only conclude that they suffer. And in that suffering is due to the situation in which we human beings place them in. It cannot be anything other than mistreatment. This is borne out, for example, by a 2019 National Geographic report that estimates that orcas in the wilds live between 50 and 80 years. However, only a few orcas trapped in the wild and kept captive have exceeded 30 years. And none born in captivity has achieved it. Most of them develop stereotypes behaviors, which are repeated actions without any function that can lead to self-mutilation. This cruelty without justification must stop, and it is our obligation as human animals to repair the damage caused, and when this is not possible, to mitigate it as much as possible, to live together in a world where we all fit a less cruel world. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Juan Martín. Sandra's case was such a success animal rights here in Argentina, and the government is so lucky to have this team of professionals working for him. And now it's a pleasure and an honor to introduce Howard Garrett with a degree in zoology. He's an orca researcher and activist based on Wind Bay Island in Washington State, USA. Howard has been working with southern resident orcas of the Pacific Northwest for over 4 years, beginning as a field assistant at the Orca Center for Whale Research. Howard launched the Lolita campaign in 1995 and has worked alongside other organizations in the Lolitas retirement land. He and his wife, Susan Berta, founded Orca Network. Since 2001, this organization has been giving presentations on orca natural history, conservation, and captivity issues in Washington for students and community organizations. Stories of orca for the media, including the film Blackfish in 2013. Orca Network keeps people's awareness with its programs and recent whale sightings, news, issues, events, and educational material and natural history of Salish sea whales, archive sightings, reports, and scientific publications. Orca Network makes a real connection between whales and people in the Pacific Northwest. Hello, Howard. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you for making some time for us.
There. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I just want to thank you so much for having me, for inviting me to come. Thank you to Derechos Animales Marinos for this entire Congress and all of these fascinating talks. I did not know about Sandra until tonight, and now I know so much more, and it's such a parallel case with Toki, as I call her. So greetings from Washington State, not DC. We're up here in the upper left corner of our map, where we are grateful to live on land and water that are, and for thousands of years, have been home to coastal Salish tribes, living in spiritual harmony with the natural world. We've learned so much from our tribal, especially our Lummi friends, as Alejandro can tell you. My experience has been with mainly population studies, like the demographic study of southern resident orcas. But for the past 25 years or more, I've also been focused on one single orca, Toki. And I've learned to see her as a person with her own life, her own history, her own story, and her awareness of her life, of where she came from and her surroundings, her situation, I think is very clear to her. I think she has a very good understanding of where she is and where she should be. And it's more relevant than ever right now to talk about her, to understand her better, because how she is perceived will likely determine what happens to her in the very near future. It's how people see her. Can we go to the first slide, please? Are we doing a share slide? I assume that you are doing it. I could try it, but it's been scary. Okay, we have it. Thank you. So, who is this whale? And I do mean who, not what. What is her life? What is her personhood? And what can we do to help her? Because if most people in general believe that she is capable of swimming into a stretcher and being carried back to her native habitat and doing well there, we'll probably get the chance to do that. But if most people think she's too old or too weak to do that safely, she probably won't be given the opportunity to try. Her life literally depends on how she is seen. And she is seen in many different ways by different people. Slide 2, please. People at marine parks call her Toki, short for Tokitai, the name that was given to her by Dr. Jesse White, seen here in the 1970s in the tank with Toki and Hugo, who was a young male captured before Toki was. Hugo repeatedly bashed his head against the walls and the viewing window of the tank, at one point nearly slicing the tip off his rostrum, which Dr. White stitched back on, and he was inspecting that wound in this photo. But Hugo died of a brain aneurysm, probably related to bashing his head against the wall in 1980. So Dr. White was sent to Seattle in 1970 to choose one of the orcas captured in Penn Cove, which is only about 15 miles north of where I am now. He chose her, and he must have been very impressed by her. He said she was so courageous and yet so gentle. Next slide, please. His affectionate feelings for Toki seem to have set the tone for her care at the aquarium for many years. But for the staff there, and for most of the public, he is generally seen as a willing performer, but a habituated whale, captured as a baby and wouldn't remember where she came from and only knows what trainers have taught her. Many believe she's psychologically damaged from being isolated for so long and that she can't handle changes. They often see her as old and frail, even geriatric, possibly ill or carrying pathogens that could infect the endangered southern residents. Of course, we can never allow that to happen. But any possibility of her spreading any disease can and will be resolved before she leaves Miami. And many of us are very unhappy seeing her kept in that tank year after year and would like to see her returned to her native habitat. She's often seen as a symbol of captivity and human arrogance, dominate and hold large, powerful, wide-ranging animals captive for profit or entertainment. And they may see her as a highly intelligent, sentient being, brave and resilient, but condemned to a lifetime sentence just for being beautiful and magnificent. For the Lummi people and for Salish tribes, she's known as Skali Chuktanut, a family member stolen from them and denied the respect and honor and the life that she deserves. For the Lummi, orca are Koltomachan, meaning the people that live under the water. Lummies have declared their sacred obligation to bring her home. But for me, as a California kid who grew up near Sacramento and studied at Berkeley and Colorado College, I tend to look at her through the eyes of science and try to use observation and verification, see what and who she is. But I've gained huge respect for her amazing resilience and her stamina, her patience, and her grace under extreme pressure, and for her affectionate nature, the way that she was raised by her family. Of course, we don't know how she's seen or named by her own real orca family. Toki has been given 3 different names by humans. Dr. White named her Tokitai, a Coast Salish greeting meaning nice day, pretty colors. But Seaquarium renamed her Lolita, saying she would be the young female mate for Hugo, who is also a Southern resident. And Lummi Chief Bill Silix James named her Scally Chuckernut, after Scally Chuck, a village on Penn Cove, where she last saw and heard her family. I call her Toki because it's easy to say and it's the name that she has heard all these years. So I'll try looking at her first as a member of her species, a killer whale or Sinus orca, with all the astounding abilities that we now know that the species possesses. And then I'll consider her as a member of her community, her family, her clan, the Southern residents. He's identified as a member of LPOD by photos from the capture and the fact that her calls match with the LPOD dialect. Then I'll try to see who she is with her own personality, her individuality, her character, and her abilities, and her incredible spirit and tenacity through almost 52 years of confinement in a tank that's only 4 times her length and not as deep as she is long. Next slide, please. But first, to catch you up on current events, a lot has happened lately. It started with 2 big developments last summer. First, in August, the Dolphin Company, owner of 22 dolphin parks, mostly in Mexico, but including 3 in the US, announced plans to purchase the park. The previous owner was a holding company based in Sweden, so this offered the possibility of communicating with the new owners. Next slide. Then in September, a USDA Department of Agriculture inspection report from June 2021 became public that showed glaring deficiencies in the care and the quality controls at the Seaquarium. The inspection was triggered by the deaths of 5 bottlenose dolphins and 1 sea lion there in 1 year. Inspectors found enclosures in disrepair and animals, including Toki, underfed or fed rotten fish. Water quality had deteriorated. The veterinarian said her instructions were being ignored. However, that vet was soon fired after many of her allegations in the report were challenged by other staff. But virtually nothing ever leaks out. No information comes out of the Seaquarium, so we don't really know how bad it was. Whale Stadium was closed to the public at some point with no announcement last fall, never to reopen, as it turns out. And the park now has a new veterinarian and a consulting vet to oversee Toki's care. Next slide, please. But then in December 2021, another scathing report from the USDA showed 3 more dolphin deaths. One was a Pacific white-sided dolphin named Catalina, who died from trauma in the whale tank, probably after an altercation with Toki. They don't get along. They're not good companions. The dolphin company's purchase of the park couldn't be final until the problems pointed out by the USDA reports were addressed and the company could be granted a license to operate from the USDA. And Miami-Dade County owns the property and couldn't transfer the lease to the dolphin company without the USDA certification. So the USDA had to grant a license to the new owner to be able to own the park, but they couldn't continue to allow the horrific animal welfare violations in a dangerous, broken down, 52-year-old unlawful tank. It's incredible that Toki has outlived the tank that was built for her in 1970. Next slide. You can see that the gates to the medical part of the tank are closed in this photo, probably to separate one of the lags, the Pacific white-sided dolphins, to avoid aggression. On March 4th, the USDA did finally grant a license to the dolphin company with a twist. The license simply did not include the whale stadium or Toki or the dolphin in the tank with her. The USDA said they may not be displayed in any way, not even images or any public mention, and the whale stadium must stay closed. The dolphin company agreed and became the new owner of the aquarium and the caretaker of an orca and a dolphin that bring in zero revenue. They can't charge any money. They can't show her to anybody. Toki and the dolphin are now unseen by the public, but hopefully they're getting good care and trainers are spending a lot of time with them. We hope for her sake that they're taking good care of her. Next slide. On March 23rd, Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava held a press conference to announce that Toki would be examined by independent veterinarians and the results would be made public. Next slide. Also speaking at the press conference was Pritam Singh, a South Florida philanthropist and environmentalist and board member of the Sea Shepherd Society, who had announced on February 24th that he was donating $1 million toward Toki's care. He founded a new nonprofit organization called Friends of Lolita, whose board includes Dr. Roger Payne, who helped discover humpback songs, and dolphin scientist Diana Rice, who did the same for mirror self-recognition in dolphins, and Charles Vinnick, who is also executive director of the Whale Sanctuary Project. Next slide. Also on the board of Friends of Lolita is Lummi tribal elder Raynell Morris, whose traditional tribal name is Quilihila. She has led the Lummi efforts to bring Skalituktanot home. Raynell is co-founder of Sacred Lands Conservancy, a nonprofit working with the Whale Sanctuary Project, to develop a sea pen for Toki in the San Juan Islands. Next. Also speaking at the press conference were executives of the Dolphin Company, the new owner of the aquarium. The press conference showed amazing cooperation and collaboration among the diverse groups represented there. I mean, think of it. This is group, this collaboration is between the county government, the owner of the park, advocates for returning her home, activists like us, whale sanctuary specialists, the scientific community with Roger Payne and Diana Rice on the board, and coming along at just the right time, the wealthy benefactor who can make it all happen. The Friends of Lolita is unlike any nonprofit I've ever heard of. Next. The medical, I don't have a slide for this in this slideshow, but the medical and behavioral exam was in fact done in mid-May. It showed she had some unknown infection over the winter, but her blood work shows that she's almost completely cleared up. She also showed some minor anemia due to water quality problems that have been addressed. So the exam showed that she's in remarkably good health, and in just a few months, she'll be in tip-top condition and ready to travel home. So now the debates will begin in earnest about whether she's able to travel home. This talk is really meant to answer that question, because that will be the debate that decides her future. So now we have a photo of a brain cell here, and that is to illustrate some very important things about the brain of an orca. The brain of the killer whale, for one thing, and this is a quote from a published paper, may be the largest of all taxa. It's been commonly believed, understood that the sperm whale had the largest brain, but orcas have actually larger brains than sperm whales. And it also has creases and folds called girification, which allows greater cognitive function to the best of our knowledge. Don't ask me to explain that. I'm not a neuroscientist, but this is becoming common knowledge. So it's safe to say that they have very, very powerful brains and very big ones. Brains are hotbeds of electric currents. Electrochemical impulses arc across gaps between neurons called synapses, creating brain waves that convey everything we see and think and feel and do. Brain activity can be measured in humans with an electroencephalogram. And we're still talking about Toki because this is her inherited brain power that we're talking about. And orca brains are 5 times larger than human brains. And big brains, among many other functions, allow long and vivid memory retention. Next slide. Orcas and other odontocetes have a large paralimbic lobe that humans don't have. It's poorly understood, but some of the attributes that are ascribed to it are that it enhances thought processes, judgment, empathy, awareness, memory, emotions, and language. That's a lot of work for a little lobe in the brain, but apparently it enhances that. Of course, we all have those qualities too, but the paralimbic just seems to give a greater ability for all of those things. And there is this electrical activity that may play a role. And this is maybe an off-the-wall hypothesis, but is there a potential for reception and interpretation by an orca of electrical activity in other orca brains by picking up and receiving those electrical impulses? Or can they actually receive impulses from human brains? I wouldn't say that, except that there are many incidences, many stories that illustrate. We all struggle with how to interpret other people's feelings. Sorry, that's my dog. We all do. Hopefully we don't have much to worry about as far as how other people are feeling, but once in a while at least, we have to try to read the room, as it's said, or to be sensitive to someone else's feelings. That's empathy. And it's very important for humans just to live and communicate with others. This paralimbic lobe seems to enable extraordinary empathy in orcas. There are enough anecdotes to illustrate this enhanced empathy, but it adds up to data. There are many credible reports of orcas either rescuing humans that indicate they knew we needed help, or arriving on time for events that are about them, that indicate they knew we were thinking about them. For instance, Ken Balcom, the researcher who founded the Center for Whale Research and the Study of Southern Resident Orcas, back in the 1970s was stuck in the fog, thick fog. He couldn't see anything and had a little boat and nothing, no other navigational technology at the time but a compass. And he knew the direction, but he also knew there were very fast currents and an island in between where he wanted to go. So he was afraid of driving up on the rocks when J-Pod showed up. The orcas in J-Pod gathered around his boat within 8 or 10 feet of his boat and stayed in that position and led him directly 25 miles across Admiralty Inlet and the Strait of Juan de Fuca to the dock where he tied up his boat. Then they went back on their way. J-Pod to the rescue. And in a very similar experience, Alexandra Morton was caught in the fog up in Johnstone Strait when a ship, she could hear that there was a ship, a big, probably a cruise ship, headed down toward her, but she didn't know where it was and she couldn't see anything in the fog. When northern residents gathered around her and led her to safety away from the path of that ship. She says, we cannot explain these things, but we sure can't forget them. She also, in her book, Listening to the Orcas, she talks about a time when she was at a marine park in California and she was talking to trainers about a behavior that she thought they could teach to Corky, the orca, the northern resident orca, about slapping her dorsal fin sideways. She'd seen them do it up there in Johnstone Strait and thought that Corky could do it too. And they said, okay, yeah, let's do that. We'll start training her tomorrow. And the trainers walked away and Alexandra turned around and there was Corky slapping her dorsal fin over and over and over and having a great joy to do it. Carl Safina, the author, suggests that the minds of whales and dolphins may have evolved to allow for the sharing of thoughts, intentions, and feelings, not just between them, but between them and human beings who possess a brain large enough to appreciate it. Maybe orcas consider us non-orca persons. There was another case when the Secretary of State of Washington held a ceremony about a service for the loss of an orca, J6, a J-Pod whale named Ralph, in his honor. So he held a ceremony after Ralph, the orca, died. And he told everyone to be there at 1:30 in the afternoon. And the orcas had not been seen for many weeks. Nobody expected them. But at precisely 1:30, J-Pod showed up right there at the place where he was giving that talk. He was interrupted by breaches, one after another. And it turns out that those breaches were done by J6, by J6 Ralph's sister. And northern residents attended a memorial service for Mike Bigg after he passed away in 1990. Mike had spent hundreds of hours with them as he developed the photo ID method, and they attended his funeral service. Some trainers have said they don't really train orcas, they just suggest a behavior, and the whales know what to do. Next slide, please. Dr. Giles says orcas are a better version of us, which suggests we could learn a thing or two from them. And Seattle Times writer Linda Mapes says when people ask her if orcas are as intelligent as humans, she tells them not to flatter themselves. We should ask if we're as intelligent as orcas. It seems the word is getting out that orcas have some pretty impressive capabilities. Next. Well, that's just looking at individual orcas and their brain power. But how does this mind reading ability, or whatever it is, this enhanced empathy, show up in orca societies? 20 years ago, this was published. 2001, 21 years ago. The complex and stable vocal and behavioral cultures of sympatric groups that's living in the same habitat of killer whales appear to have no parallel outside humans and represent an independent evolution of cultural faculties. So orcas, like humans, became aware of themselves somewhere along the line in their evolutionary history. And they formed into a variety of distinct cultures in which all the members are highly aware of themselves as members of their culture. And mirror self-recognition has been demonstrated in dolphins, of course. So it's important to know that self-awareness is inherently a social phenomenon. You share your self-awareness, you learn your self-identity in the context of the interactions with others. The fact that orcas live in cultural communities is more than just a fascinating fact. As members of cultures, their behavior is completely different. Everything they do, every move they make, is done according to the rules and the traditions and the examples and the learnings from their role models, from their elders, from their families, from their culture, their diets, their mating practice, their birthing, their communications, so much else that goes on when we have no idea what's going on, are guided by family members. So Toki's extraordinarily cool temperament and engaging personality are inherently bound up with her identity as a Southern resident orca. It's what she learned before her capture, and it doesn't go away, even after over 50 years of isolation. The Toki we see today is the same whale that learned how to be an orca and deal with life from her family, especially her mother. It's not just part of her memory, it's who she is. This classic illustration by Uko Gorder describes the known orca ecotypes, as they're called, worldwide, neatly confirming Rendell and Whitehead's paper on orca cultural faculties. Some of these ecotypes include more than one community. For instance, there are 5 salmon-eating orca communities across the North Pacific, from the Salish Sea here in Washington and British Columbia to Kamchatka, Russia. There are 5 different communities, each with its own language and traditions, with no crossover between them. They're all put together as the resident ecotype. So within many of these ecotypes, there may be many. So this great whale watcher cover from 2011 acknowledges a basic fact about orcas. Being the apex predator of the entire world's oceans, not just an interesting fact like about orcas, like having culture, but it has profound implications for their behavior. It means they have lost the need for an instantaneous instinctive reflex to sudden danger. No fight or flight or fright, no deer in the headlights response. They just don't experience sudden danger. At least they didn't until modern industrial humans invaded their habitat. But no other animal in the sea would try to stalk or attack an orca. They're too big, too fast, and too capable of thrashing or ripping apart anything that may try. And they're famous for their teamwork and cooperation. They have each other's backs. And that's been true for maybe 8 or 10 million years. So orcas have had nothing to fear for a very long time, except other orcas. Either other clan members or other clans or communities, but they seem to have developed cultural traditions that minimize any hostile interactions. What we see today, so far anyway, in every orca community worldwide are matrilineal family groups centered around the mothers or elder grandmothers with no apparent jousting or competing for dominance by males or females, living in cohesive cultural communities with no in or out migration, with usually only 200 or 300 individuals in each population. And we see virtually no hostility or aggression, either within or between communities. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but it's very, very rare. And no orca has been banished from its matriline to our knowledge. And so they have no cause for fear. And that's who Toki is, which means Toki also has no fear. She never had it growing up. She hasn't had it for millions of years. Orca females are usually reproductive from their early teens to about 40, after which they may live another 3 to 5 decades. This long post-reproductive lifespan corresponds with the essential role post-reproductive females play to guide their families and share food with them. Older females also continue to travel 100 miles a day with their families until their last few days. So at about 56 years old, Toki is post-reproductive, but her age does not indicate that she's in declining health. She still has a long life ahead of her. Next. This is where Toki is from. It's officially named the Salish Sea in 2009. This beautiful map shows the river systems that once produced bountiful runs of big, fat Chinook salmon everywhere at all times of the year. And it also, down there on the bottom, shows the mouth of the Columbia River, into which even more huge salmon runs coursed, fixated on their natal spawning beds throughout the Columbia and Snake River basins, all the way into British Columbia and Montana. So thousands of miles and 1,000 feet of elevation were no obstacle for these salmon. They populated the huge inland areas, all the river systems, and they provided the sustenance for basically almost everything in the ocean, but especially for the southern resident orcas. Not a bad habitat, they must have thought. Orcas are born after 17 or 18 months of gestation, and for about half that time, their hearing, which is their most important sense, is developed well enough so they can hear the calls made by their families through the water in the womb. They're able to swim almost immediately after birth and are communicating with their family and starting to catch fish at between 1 and 2 years old. You may remember A73 Springer, who was on her own at less than 2 years old, 20 years ago. And L95 Luna, who was just a few months older than 2 years. And both were able to feed themselves without any problem in unfamiliar waters and with no help from anyone. Next. One thing I learned doing photo ID is that if there's not a photo, it didn't happen. So this photo proves that the Salish Sea does exist. This is where Toki was born and raised. She just saw it from a different level. Next. The ancestors of today's Southern residents, no doubt, met up and became very familiar with tribal families who traveled everywhere by canoe since time immemorial. They would have come to know each other personally, as they would have encountered one another repeatedly, year after year. Humans and orcas were born and grew up in each other's presence over countless generations, building deep traditions of mutual trust and acceptance for both tribal members and for Toki's clan. So Toki's cultural heritage is to relate to humans as friends, as family. Next. So the next 4 slides are what I imagine Toki may see in her mind, her memory, if she could put portraits and photos on a shelf in her tank, these might be the kind of things that she might put up there. So let's just go through the next few slides, one every 10 or 20 seconds, just to look at how nice they are. A beautiful life. This is where she should have been all these years with her family. These are her LPOD family members. She must hold memories of them playing, resting, foraging with her matriline and the whole clan. Might look like that. So now let's go to who is Toki. Well, she's definitely a survivor against all odds and predictions. She's persevered almost unharmed after almost 52 years in that tiny tank. He was captured at about age 4. So she was a fully fledged member of her family, communicating in her family's dialect and foraging and sharing fish right alongside them. With her impressive brain power, there's no reason to think she's forgotten what she learned before she was taken away. Next. And she's courageous. I mean, just think of what she's been through and still going through. The extreme trauma of capture, that could cause PTSD. Loneliness and separation from her mother and family all these years. And the boredom of captivity, nothing going on, just bare walls, no life at all around her. And Hugo's awful death, his anguish to bash his head against the wall, and then his death in 1980. And hurricanes, I don't know if, maybe she enjoys them, I don't know, but they could do big damage to her tank if she got a direct hit. And new trainers, she does build relationships with the trainers. And they often respond. I don't know if they always do, but some do at least, and give her love and affection back. But then they leave, and there's a new trainer. And Toki has to train the new trainer to be a friend, to be a companion. That must be stressful. And the hostile dolphins, of course, that bump into her all the time, try to scrape her and scratch her. And who knows what rude people have done. If they've yelled at her, thrown things at her, I just don't know. But not everyone is so nice. She's gentle. There's really no record of her ever harming either trainers or herself or spectators or anyone else. She's careful with people. And she's affectionate. Next. I really wonder what sort of magic Toki was weaving here. Trainers have said when she looks into your eyes, it's like she's looking into your soul. Mayor Cava, this is Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, Miami-Dade. And she has not said anything publicly that I know of about this visit. But the way Toki is looking at her with her enhanced empathy, it's not hard to see something was going on here, something intense and beautiful. Next. Okay, this on the left side is Toki playing sprinkler. She just made up a game with Rachel, who visited her a year and a half ago in November for 3 days, 6 different shows, in early and out late, so she could spend as much time as possible with Toki, and she did bond with Toki. They became very close. And here is where Toki just decides to play a game. Let's play sprinkler just for laughs. And then on the right side, if we can play a short video, 4 Seaquarium, I don't know if this will play. Can we play this video? 4 Seaquarium employees in blue shirts were chatting by the rail, ignoring her. So Toki the trickster drenched them and a few innocent bystanders. Then she checks out her good work and moves on looking satisfied. So is it possible to play that video?
No, it seems
Okay.
like the PDF is not allowing us to.
Okay, well, I'll just describe it. Yeah, well, she drenched the 4 employees of the Seaquarium, and then she looked very happy about it. And okay, next slide. She does seek companionship. She's not withdrawn, even after all these years. And a lot of orcas and many other animals in captivity do just go silent. They go to a corner. They don't communicate, but she doesn't. She doesn't just sink to the bottom and stay motionless. She reaches out to engage with people. Here she is coming to Rachel, who is telling her how much she loves her. Southern resident orcas stay with their mothers their entire lives with their enhanced empathy. So you can imagine they're able to form deep relationships. Next slide. She's energetic. She's got incredible physical strength. For 50 years, she did 5 breaches per show, 2 or 3 shows per day. She's maintained her cardiovascular vigor over the years. And slide 35, and again, if we can't play the video, I'll just describe it because it's really amazing. She took off from this standing start and gradually built up speed, going around that tiny tank, and she's only got from wall to wall, it's 80 feet on one side, and she goes around the work island, so that's probably maybe 50 feet. So it's in that tight circle that she went around and around, faster and faster and faster, until she was racing and throwing up big waves and streaking. You could see her in the video just going so fast. So that's with no trainer. That's completely on her own volition, just because she felt like it. She felt like having a good run. Maybe she enjoys the endorphin rush, you know, the chemicals in the brain that make you feel good when you go jogging. Because regular workouts do make you feel good and help maintain good health. Next slide. So in conclusion, let me say, she can be moved to her native habitat for her health and happiness, and for ours too. We'll all feel so much better when she's home, I'm sure of it. But she is energetic, and she's playful, and she's creative, and her mental and physical health are good. Somehow she maintains her balance. She still has all her teeth, She knows how she was raised, cannot have forgotten that. And she could still have 20 or 40 more years. And she responds well to trust and affection, so she can easily be helped and guided when she comes back. And transport, so many people don't understand or like to make it sound very scary, but it's not. Very routine to move orcas from place to place. And there's never been any harm done to any of the orcas over 50 years of transporting orcas by airplane. So that's not risky. So I just want to add one more thought. In terms of the power of storytelling for us, for our society, our people, reuniting Toki, Skali Chuktanat, with her home waters and her family will show us that nature has strength and resilience and healing powers that we can't necessarily see. She can represent nature becoming whole again, and that we humans who have devastated nature in so many ways can honor all living things and nature and help to make nature whole again. Toki can reassure us that we can do that. So that concludes my presentation. I can stay right here and we can do Q&A. I do have a couple of other slides, and maybe we should show those if we have a few more minutes. It'll be short, but I need to speak up for Toki's family or the southern residents, and they need more fish. They eat Chinook because they learned as they grew up as a tradition that Chinook salmon, the biggest, the fattiest, the healthiest of the salmon, was their diet. They need those. Okay, next slide. And yet there are these 4 dams on the largest river of the Columbia River system that open up into this vast, huge wilderness area that is perfect spawning habitat and has been for thousands of years. That's where those salmon are headed, but they're blocked by these 4 dams. Okay, next slide. And this is to describe how to breach the dams. And this was actually an illustration from the Army Corps of Engineers, the people who built the dams. And they were describing how to bypass the dams, how to breach the dams and free the river, which would allow those salmon to go upstream and spawn and build their populations so that Toki's family, the southern residents, would have enough to eat. So it can be done. So I just want to speak up for breaching those 4 dams. Okay, that's really all I have, except for, of course, our Orca Network programs, so that you can see that we do many things at Orca Network. Are there any questions, or where do we go from here?
Yes, thank you so much, Howard. That was an amazing masterclass for us. Thank you for bringing this information to South America. It's so valuable for us. I have some questions, but I prefer to do it then and to pass the words to Alejandro, and then we have some questions for you. It's such a honor and a pleasure to listen, to hear you. Thank you. Okay, Alejandro Ariel Dintino is our second special guest. We admire a lot him. He has supported us since our first activisms for shamanic in Argentina. He's a well-known Argentine-American animal rights activist. He's also a singer. He has been living in Miami since 2001. And since 2014, he has been leading the Toki schools, making him the inspiration for the main characters of a children's book called This is Freedom, the Toki Story. But a picture is worth than 1,000 words, so we will be using this video to show Dintino's work.
Estoy impactada con las imágenes que estoy viendo a través de las redes sociales de la ayuda, de cómo la gente realmente ayuda a las personas a liberar o más bien a rescatar esos animales que están en crisis en este momento precisamente en Texas. Así que bueno, eso me impacta y hablo de esto porque precisamente conocí a una persona argentina, un muchacho que se encarga de ayudar a animales. No importa cuál sea la situación o la condición, él está ahí siempre para ellos. Su nombre es Alejandro, es argentino y se los presento.
¿Se sufre mucho siendo activista?
Alejandro se maquilla y se viste con atuendos una y otra vez y no precisamente para celebrar el Día de Brujas varios días al año.
¡Eso merece el respeto!
Lo hace porque protesta en nombre de millones de animales expuestos a sufrimiento alrededor del mundo. Osos, elefantes y Lolita, la orca que vive en el Miami Aquarium en este tanque apenas 4 veces más grande que ella.
Mis días de vacaciones me los tomaba, pero siempre para luchar por Lolita. Mi carro lo he quemado ya de tanto ir para aquí, para Miami. Megáfono, compresor de aire, en algún caso que nos quedemos con la rueda baja.
Así luce el carro de un activista independiente.
Estudié la vida de Lolita a full. Y no solamente Lolita, sino todos los animales que están en cautiverio, circos, zoológicos, cacería. Pero el caso de Lolita es un caso emblemático, es un caso simbólico, porque Lolita hace 47 años que está en el mismo tanque.
Parque Acuático tiene demandas interpuestas, por ejemplo, por PETA, uno de los grupos defensores de animales más reconocidos del mundo.
Bueno, el cautiverio es como un cáncer. A esta altura de su edad, digamos como 50 años tiene ya casi, está quedando ciega.
Probablemente por su pasión, por pasar día y noche aquí, allá, bajo condiciones climáticas extremas, muchos lo catalogan como loco.
Sí, loco por los animales. Ellos también sienten como los seres humanos, tienen derecho a la vida y a la libertad.
En este momento su enfoque es el Lolita. Pide, junto a otros activistas reconocidos como Rick Barry, exentrenador de delfines precisamente en el Miami Aquarium, que retiren a Lolita a este santuario en el estado de Washington. Hay un plan preparado para esto.
Como un corral marino donde ella no podría salir, estaría en aguas naturales, pero en el mar.
Hasta que pueda cazar por su cuenta. Alejandro dice que no dejará de abogar por los que no tienen voz, aunque le ofrezcan dinero por su silencio.
$1 millón. Que lo usen para liberar a Lolita.
Señoras y señores, bueno, estén o no estén de acuerdo con la liberación de Lolita, lo que sí creo que todos tenemos en común es que pensamos que necesitamos más personas como Alejandro en el mundo y precisamente en momentos como estos donde desastres naturales como los que están ocurriendo en Texas necesitan de la mano de personas como él. Así que bueno, ahí les dejo eso para que reflexionen.
Hello, Alejandro. It's another pleasure to have you here too. You are muted.
Hola, ¿cómo están? Bueno, ya creo que la entrevista habla sobre mi activismo, no voy a hablar mucho porque en realidad Howard es el centro acá. You know? I don't want to talk too much, Howard, because I want them to make your questions. You know, we need to take advantage that you here, you know, with us today. So, una de las cosas que nombró Howard en el video que se pasó en el PowerPoint, nombró un caso de su hermano, Ken Balcom, que es muy importante, diciendo de la inteligencia de las orcas. Ken Balcom estaba en el mar y había mucha niebla, y las orcas lo guiaron a él, alrededor del bote lo guiaron hasta que encuentra la salida. Ese fue el ejemplo que dio él, por supuesto hablado en inglés, que por ahí mucha gente no lo entiende. Con esto quiere decir que las orcas son muy inteligentes. Lolita sabe muy bien lo que está pasando, y bueno, no quiero hablar mucho, ya ustedes tienen mi página, yo he seguido mi lucha, y he empezado la lucha desde el 2014, hasta ahora, he hecho televisión, documentales, radio, está todo en mi Facebook. Ustedes pueden observarlo también incluso en el hashtag Dintino, y voy a traer esto que es el librito que hicimos, la historia de Toki. Está en inglés y en español. Acá tenemos la información de lo que es el carácter de un niño, Alejandro, ¿sí? Que ayuda a liberar a Lolita. Y acá atrás, les voy a mostrar, tenemos toda la información de la nación Lumi. We have all the information about the Lami people, you know. Even we had information about Orca Network, la información de Orca Network, the Whale Sanctuary Project, etc., etc. Another thing I'm going to bring to the table is just Lolita Slave to Entertainment, Lolita Slave to Entertainment, where Howard and Ken Belcon mentioned all these issues about keeping these orcas in captivity, even Rico Barry, you know, so I'm gonna bring this just to let everybody knows that Howard not only did the Blackfish, this is another documentary that everybody can watch it, I think it's on YouTube. Este documental está en YouTube y lo pueden ver, incluso lo encuentran y si está en inglés lo pueden poner con los subtítulos. Así que bueno, yo no tengo mucho más nada para decir. El cartel que tienen acá estuvo en todas las notas de televisión que hicimos. This walking billboard that you see in the back is just, you see this, I start my activism, just, se me complica un poco para hablar en inglés y español, pero bueno, le podemos hacer las preguntas a Howard y muchas gracias a todos. Thank you so much. Now we can go with the questions. Howard is there waiting for you to respond everything. Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you so much to Proyecto Argentina. Thank you so much to the Judge Liberatori, María José, Derechos Animales, Juan Martín, Dalila Lewis y todos los que han ayudado a crear este evento, a hacer este evento. Okay, you can go ahead and you can make the questions now. So Howard.
Perfect, thank you, Alejandro. We have some personal questions for Howard because he has given us such a masterclass, and you can visit Orca Network website for more information. Howard, what kind of things give you the strength for doing the job? Where you find the enough strength for the activism and for fighting for orcas?
Well, sometimes it's been kind of hard. There have been years go by with no news, no new developments, nothing to tell people. But she has always stayed strong throughout it. And so she has been my inspiration, really. I've learned so much from her, and I can't possibly, quit doing this or let up at all while she is still there and can still come home. It's that knowledge that she should and can come home the entire time. I've never been confused by all of the criticism and all of the skepticism and the doubts, and people say, oh, it will never happen, it would kill her. They come up with so many different reasons, and none of them have ever been logical to me. They've not made sense. So I've just kept my focus clear and looked at her and seen that she is still healthy. She can come home. I know it. And so we're going to make it happen. That's how.
Thank you, Howard. A similar question maybe, but since 1995, it's a long time. Have you ever feel a kind of frustration, or have you ever feel that you wanted to give up the cause?
Well, I have. There have been times when I did not know what to do, that nothing was working. Way back in when was it? In the early 2000s, a woman named Shelby Proy. Shelby Proy now goes by Shelby Nicole. She was in Miami, and she organized demonstrations in front of this aquarium every week, and that gave me hope that people are telling people in Miami. And then along came Alejandro, and Alejandro has done so much, has relit the fires to let all of Miami know every week, and all of South America and Mexico and the world, that she could come home and she should come home. So people like, well, Alejandro and Shelby, but also hundreds of others. I mean, if I name a few, I'll miss 100, because there are so many people that have been so helpful and sent their thoughts and their wishes and their artwork and their poetry and their music and their all sorts of their jewelry. So much has been dedicated to her. That's what keeps me going. Every time somebody says something, even a comment on social media, tells me, yeah, we're still here. There's so many more and more every day out there that want her to come home. So that's what gives me hope. And of course, I should say that when I found out, when the Lummi people said that they are resolved, that they have a sacred obligation to bring her home, and it's from a whole new viewpoint, a whole new experience of orcas in their cultures as family members. And that is so powerful, so compelling. I could not say that from my educational background, my life and family history, but I see it. I see what they're saying. It is true. They feel like she is their sister, and she was kidnapped and she's stolen away and she needs to come home. And that gives me huge hope. It's a complete new level of action for her.
Thank you. According to your opinion, what kind of things are needed to make a better activism for marine animal in captivity?
Well, I think just, it's obvious that she should not be in that tank. And so anybody who says that is the spark. That's the start. That's just having an ethical viewpoint that is wrong. It should not be done. She should come home. When you just look at it, and many people who go into this aquarium and they don't know, it's just entertainment, but they come out saying that's terrible. She should never be there. So it really doesn't. It's just being strong enough to say it, to speak out in any way you can. It could be with your friends, your family, your people at work, or if you can get into social media, any of those, or broadcast media, if you can get on a radio show or a TV show and just say that. And I think at this time, it's important to also say that she can do it, that she is capable, that there is no reason to fear that she will somehow be shocked or she will be somehow harmed by taking her home. She won't. There's no reason to think that. So that's an important message, because that is the debate right now. And there are many people, mostly they're quiet people, because they're in either government agencies, or they're scientists, or they're, but they don't know her. But they generally think, because this is what they have heard, that it's too late for her, that she wouldn't make it, and it would be dangerous. And we have to reassure all those people, because they're in the permitting agencies, they still can put up a big obstacle to her coming back. So we have to convince them that there's no big risk, that it will be good for her, that she'll be fine when she comes back. In fact, it will be therapeutic. It will be healing for her. She'll get better and better just by being back in her home waters. So that's part of what I think is important to say.
¿Puedo hacer un agregado ahí?
Sure.
Okay, Howard, I'm going to make an addition in Spanish about what you
Okay.
said. It's very
Good, thank you.
important. Just give me 1 minute because it's very important. Lo que Howard dice es que estamos seguros y que creemos que lo va a lograr. Lo sentimos que lo va a lograr porque Lolita es una guerrera. Y lo que él menciona sobre la nación Lumi es muy importante para la nación Lumi que ella regrese a sus aguas. ¿Por qué? Porque está todo conectado con el ambiente, su tribu, con el territorio, con las aguas, con el salmón. Y no solamente eso, cuando Lolita fue capturada en el año 70, se destruyó toda esa familia. Por eso que está sufriendo hoy día la tribu, la falta de salmón, las orcas se están muriendo. Entonces es muy importante y para ellos es una obligación sagrada llevarla a Lolita de regreso. Es a sacred sea, es una obligation. Entonces ellos sienten que cuando ella regrese a sus aguas naturales, todo va a ser restaurado. Parece medio como de película, pero no es la realidad. Y ellos están en conexiones con los espíritus, con los ancestros, y ellos saben que esto será así. Entonces, por eso están reclamando que Lolita regrese, y va a regresar. Tenemos muchas esperanzas que esto va a ser así que hay que estar positiva, hay que seguir apoyando la causa, que Lolita va a regresar. Y esto va a ser una noticia mundial y va a ayudar a... Lolita va a ser la llave que va a abrir la puerta de otras orcas alrededor del mundo. Que nos odien la industria del cautiverio, pero esto va a ser así. Esto va a ser así. Thank you so much, Howard, just for the interruption.
Thank you,
Okay,
Alejandro. I wish I could say it in Spanish.
No, don't worry, don't worry. And you know, your message is going to be shared, so that's why it's very important, this part of your answers. That's why I did this addition. Okay, Dalila, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Alejandro and Howard. Yeah. Is there any difference in rehabilitating a transient orca and a resident orca?
In what way?
In making a rehabilitation plan, as they are different.
Well, not really, because the plan. The beginning of the plan is to return her into a protected sea pen, just to be very careful that that she wouldn't just swim off. So even with a transient orca, yeah, you would want to also do that same thing. And then when they either, a resident or a transient, when they regain good health, a lot of activity, high energy, and they start to poke at the net and start to look around, and it looks like, oh, they're ready to go. If the doctors say they're good, open the gate and let them go. It doesn't matter if they're resident or transient.
And we know the Lolita's family, so it's going to be easier for Lolita.
That's right.
Sabemos dónde está la manada de Lolita, o sea que it's not like the same like Kaiko. Kaiko was a different case. He wasn't able to find his paw. But Lolita is a different story. We know where it's located.
And
her
they
family.
And they come in close to the San Juan Islands. Certainly not every day, not as much as they used to, but they will within a few months. Of any, at any time, they will find her, she will find them. Yeah, that will happen.
Thank you. That was because it was a doubt for us, because Shamenk is a transient.
That's right.
Speaking about Shamenk, he has been only with the company of a bottlenose dolphin called Floppy since his mate, the orca Belen, died in 2000. do you think that they have created a kind of an affective dependence, Shemek and the dolphins? We ask this because we don't know if we have to propose that they both must be rehabilitated together and be translated together to a CPEN or a...
Ideally, that probably would be good if they both come from the same habitat. Then, yes, I would think so. But also, orcas do build a relationship with their human companions, and their human companions can reassure them and show them with their attitude and their emotions that this is good, that this is the right thing, and that everything will work just fine. So I think it's important maybe for the dolphin to go, if that's possible, that would be ideal, but also for the humans that she gets to know. And I believe this with Toki too, that they should come with in the airplane and stay with her for weeks or months, just to help her with that transition. So the same would be true of Shemek.
Perfect. Your words are so hopeful for us. And you have studied the plan for rehabilitation Keiko for doing the Toki's one. What things you take as the most important when you were studying the Keiko's case?
My feeling was that they underestimated him in the same way that the marine park industry and the trainers seemed to underestimate Toki, that he really had more abilities and more memory than they gave him credit for. They sort of saw him like a puppy dog, who was just, playful, but dependent, and didn't know anything. But Keiko knew a lot. He knew how to catch fish. He did remember his communication, his calls that are unique to his family that he was taken from in Iceland. And well, this sort of tells a little bit about the attitude of the project managers and the staff there, is that a team, a couple of scientists from Massachusetts came out and they recorded Keiko's calls. And they said, oh yes, those are Icelandic calls. And they told the staff there, but nobody told anybody else. And that was very important information to know about her going back. We know Toki uses L-pod calls. Well, Keiko used Icelandic calls from his family, but the staff there, the trainers and everybody, they didn't think that was important, or they didn't think that, I don't know what they thought, but they didn't tell anybody. And I think it's very important. In fact, that entire project was done in secrecy. It was done without any kind of information given to the public about how he's doing. And, from day to day, his progress, there would be the occasional media, some summary of how he's doing, some generally hopeful or whatever, but I would like to see the daily logs. I would like to see what kind of things he did and what he learned, and little stories about what he did from time to time. I read everything, every news report that came from Keiko from 1993 until he died. And now and then there would be some little mention, some quote that would get into a newspaper or on media. And I learned a lot from those, but those were accidents. You know, there should be regular updates, regular reporting. I want to know how it's going. And thousands of people wanted to know, how is Keiko and how's his progress and what's going on with him? And it was a secret. And I would not want that to happen with Toki. I want people to hear from the people taking care of her how she is. I would like to hear now from the sequarium. It's wonderful that we have this public examination report from the veterinarians, but that's it. Now we have to wait for another one. I would like to hear more on a daily basis, you know, how she is doing, little stories about, is she playing? Is she, you know, is she having a problem with the dolphin? You know, what's going on? I think that would be wonderful. So that's a lesson that I learned from the Keiko project is you got to let people know how it's going. Yeah, I wish they had.
Yeah, me too. I would love to have that information, like you said, Howard, daily. Tener esa
Yes.
información diaria, que nos digan cómo van los avances, los progresos, si Lolita va a ser liberada, no esperar 2 meses más ahora y a ver qué pasó. Yeah, it's so long, waiting for so long just to have another report, Howard.
I know.
You know? It's terrible. People, you know, it's like some people lose hope.
Yeah.
Tiene esperanza mucha gente en lo que está pasando.
Exactly, exactly. One example was when Keiko went back to Iceland. The first time that he went into the water, when they lowered him down into his water that he had not been in for 20 years, he loved it. He took off, and he had been, you know, strapped into this airplane for, I think, 19 hours. And yet, as soon as he got free of that, he swam everywhere. He dove deep. He explored every corner. He went everywhere he could. And he lost interest in the humans because he was so excited about being home. And that was not in an official report. It was just a quote in one newspaper that I happened to find, you know, but that's really important information to know that he loved it. You know, that part was an instant success.
Increíble. Lo que dijo de que Keiko cuando cayó al agua, la bajaron en el mar, perdió hasta el contacto con los humanos, porque estaba tan contento de estar en el ambiente natural, que se olvidó de todo lo que existía alrededor, y eso fue algo que no fue reportado. Es que como la industria, I think the industry, the captive industry, tried to hide all these details for themselves. Because, you know, because of the business. O sea, la industria trata de guardar todas estas cosas por el negocio. But anyway, Howard, don't worry. We're going to get Lolita home. And I think the captivity industry is going to collapse. But we don't care. We love these orcas. And everybody, we're going to liberate all the orcas.
Okay.
Bueno. Go ahead, Dalila.
I just want her home.
Me too, everybody. And we feel the same way, you know. So, ella va a regresar. Ella este año se va. This year, she's going home.
Alejandro, creo que el solo hecho de que tengan la oportunidad de tocar el mar de nuevo, digamos, y nadar en el mar, vale todo, digamos, el hecho de liberarlo, más allá de los resultados. Después los resultados serán lo que sean, pero me parece que vale más eso.
Así es. Sí, no, y como mencionó Howard ahí, yo pienso que cuando Lolita toque el agua natural, fresca, original de sus aguas, ¿no? De cuando fue robada, se va a volver loca, digamos, como una forma de decir, ¿no? Digamos, de alegría. Y más que ha sido una guerrera que ha estado tantos años en ese tanque, ha pasado huracanes, ha pasado catástrofes, y sobrevivió. El estadio de los delfines se derrumbó parte del techo y murieron delfines y todo cuando hubo el último huracán Irma, y sin embargo Lolita ahí firme. Es una enviada, es como Lolita es como un espíritu, ¿viste? Un enviado, un big spirit. Lolita is like a big spirit, Howard, you know? I remember the hurricane Irma just went through Miami, destroyed the Dolphin Stadium, you know, and Lolita is still alive, survived. She's a warrior. Es una guerrera,
Absolutely.
Lolita. She went through many bad things in the past. How many hurricanes?
Yes. And she
¿Cuántos
has so
huracanes?
much, she has so much courage to go through all that. And I don't know, it seems like she is kind of protected by the spirit.
By the big spirit, by the Lumi spirit, la nación
Yes.
Lumi, los espíritus de los ancestros, la nación Lumi. She's an angel, you know, I think she will go back home. She's an angel, she's a warrior, she's a big spirit, she's a Mahatma, and she's part of the Lami nation cultural heritage, you know,
Yes.
cultural heritage. The Lami people, you know, loves Lolita as a daughter, family member. They call these creatures the people that lives under the water. Ellos aman esta, y la llaman la gente que vive debajo del agua, la nación Lumi, los indios nativos. Así que imagínense ustedes el amor que le tienen estos animales, los ven como una hija. Para ella le robaron la hija de su territorio, por eso que están reclamando ahora que se la devuelvan, que va a ser lo que va a llevar a que cure el mar, cure las orcas, cure la salmón, cure todo lo que es la nación de ellos. Así que bueno, yeah, it's an amazing story, right? No, but we're gonna see Lolita home as soon as possible. Okay, Dalila, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Here I have there is a question about Tilicum. Could you give us your opinion about the cruelty that he has to live?
Oh my God.
Yes.
Illikum's story is so sad, so terrible. I'm so thankful to Gabriele Copperthwaite, who made Blackfish, for telling his story so well. His life demonstrates the callousness, the depravity, the lack of any empathy by the humans who captured him, who kept him captive first in Canada and then shipped him to Mexico. I'm sorry, that was Keiko. Shipped him to Victoria, Canada, and then to Orlando, and just mistreated him the entire time. And even, you know, he was isolated, but he had to be, I guess. I don't know, you know, even after he killed Don Brancho, the trainer, they kept him isolated. He was not given any kind of life. He was just, you know, like a commodity that you put in a can, you know, and ship around. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question, but I just think it was so terrible.
Yes, it is. It was terrible what industry has done to him. What would you tell about? What would you say to someone who doesn't know anything about marine parks or captivity?
I would say you're witnessing exploitation and a disrespect for the animals. And it seems to me to be an expression of dominance, of the need to dominate. There's a very interesting book that describes the beginnings of the circus in the Roman Empire, you know, in the Colosseums. And so much of what they did was go to Africa or anywhere and find large mammals, lions and tigers and elephants, and then let them kill each other or kill them for entertainment, you know. And that was to say we are above them. We are better than nature, and we can do whatever we want. We are the kings of the planet. And it's not true. We need our family. We need our relatives, all the animals, all of them are important for us to live, and they need to be respected. And so I would tell, I guess that was a long answer, but anyone going to a marine park, that they're watching exploitation, disrespect, and dominance.
Yes, totally. How were the conversations with Dolphin Company? Did you feel comfortable talking about Toki's rehabilitation and those?
Well, I haven't had direct conversations, but from what I understand, there is a willingness to let her come back. But I think, I mean, really, there isn't any other option. They cannot keep her there in a dilapidated, broken down tank and make no money off of her and get nothing but bad publicity for keeping her there. So she has to go somewhere. And I do not believe that SeaWorld would take her because so much publicity. All of us will follow and we'll watch what happens and we'll be very unhappy if she goes into SeaWorld at all. And it won't work. It won't work for her. She won't just blend and become a part of their collection of whales because they have a social order. The other whales there have an established order, and she would be so disruptive. They would not want her part of it. It would be very socially aggressive and hostile, I think. So, and that would not look good, and she probably would not last very long. So I don't think SeaWorld will take her. There really is no other option.
Let me do an
go
addition.
ahead.
Yeah, Howard,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, in Spanish, I'm going to translate.
Okay, please.
Yeah, because I want everybody to understand. La pregunta que hiciste es que Howard está respondiendo claramente. Él no estuvo en contacto directo con la Dolphin Company, pero sí sabemos de la gente alrededor nuestra, que estamos nosotros en contacto con ellos. No tienen otra opción que dejarla ir. No solamente porque son una compañía de delfines, no tienen experiencia con orcas, y menos en un estadio que ya tiene más de 50 años. La estructura está prácticamente al borde de desplomarse. Entonces, por un lado, no la pueden mantener allí. O sea, no le queda otra opción. Y decir, bueno, llevarla a SeaWorld. Howard mentioned SeaWorld. There is no option for SeaWorld. No la pueden trasladar a SeaWorld. ¿Por qué? A SeaWorld no. Porque sería una muy mala publicidad para SeaWorld. Y tampoco las pueden hacer que compartan el tanque con otras orcas, porque no son de la misma especie. Va a pasar lo mismo que pasó con Intl. Entonces, por eso mismo, es importante que la dejen ir. Y todos sentimos y sabemos que Lolita se va a ir. Tarde o temprano se va a ir. Así que tenemos que seguir para adelante. Thank you so much, Howard.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Go ahead, Dalila.
Thank you. Yes, totally, of course. We hope Mundo Marinos PIP owners change their mind, such as a Dolphin Company. And this is maybe a difficult message, but what would you say to the owners who didn't, the owners of this kind of company who didn't change their mind yet?
I try to tell their story. I would tell Shemek's story as much as possible, put together from the scientific understanding, from what we know of the species of orcas and of his family, whatever we know or can put together from what we do know, and tell them that he has a story and that he is aware. He is more than just sentient. He is a person himself. I mean, he knows where he is. He's very aware of his own life and of his surroundings and what happened to him, and that he is feeling the confinement of captivity every day, every minute of every day, and that he needs to be relieved of that pain. I guess that's what I would tell them. You know, for his sake, he needs to be allowed into an ocean where he won't suffer like he does in captivity.
Can I make the addition?
Okay.
Okay. No, lo que dice Howard es que le diríamos a la gente del mundo marino que Yamen es muy consciente de todo lo que pasa a su alrededor, así como Lolita. Entonces que deberíamos buscar algo que lo haga sentir más confortable ahí, como decir, ser retirado a un CIPEN. And you remember how a long time ago I asked you, I request you to make a video for Yamen, and you were using the orca ball. You remember the orca ball? Still we have a video, and your video is in the petition for Yamen.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Pusimos el video para Yamen. Él hizo un video que le pedí hace tiempo atrás usando la orca ball. Y eso fue lo que quiere decir él. Yamen es muy consciente de todo lo que está pasando a su alrededor. Son animales que tienen 5 veces el cerebro más grande que nosotros. Son súper inteligentes y ya saben todos. Son muy intuitivos. Así que eso es lo que le pediríamos a la gente de mundo marino, que hoy día existe tecnología, realidad virtual. No necesitamos tener ese animal en cautiverio. Today's Howard, we have virtual reality. We don't need to have and keep animals in captivity suffering. Doesn't make sense. You see, we have the dolphins. You remember someone posted on Facebook the robots, dolphins.
I know.
You see that, the video?
Right.
So
and you could build a whole world, a whole undersea world that the dolphins live in to show how they live. You know, that could be done technologically using all the magic of Hollywood to show how dolphins and whales live in the ocean, in their natural habitat. It would be very fascinating.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that video. That petition now counts with 500,000 signs and now supports the bill to ban the project law to build marine shows in Argentina that we will present in a few months here in the government of Argentina. So thank you so much.
I didn't know that.
500,000 of signatures. Okay, your video is over there, Howard.
And it's increasing.
And it's increasing every day, increasing. Está aumentando cada vez.
A question for you, Alejandro, about the illumination. How was the first moment you know about them, you meet them? And can you tell us about the little girl who dreamed with Lolita, with Toki, from the illumination, the little girl?
Wait, I missed the connection. What is your
Sorry.
word? Your question, yeah, it's like a distortion.
How was your first meetings with Illumination? How did you feel? And can you tell us about the little girl from Illumination who dreamed with Lolita?
Little girl?
The little girl, la niña que soñó con Lolita.
Oh, the little girl. Okay. No, the connection I made with Lolita is because of Howard. Howard introduced me the lamination. What year was Howard? You came to Florida with Lamy people and you met a meeting with Philippe Lepine, the mayor.
Yes, that was early 2018.
Oh, entonces en 2018 Howard vino con la Nación Lumi and he introduced me to the Lamy people. I didn't have any idea about Lamy people. I said, what is Lamy people? Even I didn't have any idea because I started my activism in 2014 by myself as an independent animal rights advocate. Lo empecé por mí mismo, pero Howard me presentó because they have a meeting with the Philippe Lepine. Philippe Lepine era el mayor en esa época que Philippe Lepine was supporting Lolita, and I think he sent a letter, right, Howard? He sent a letter.
And passed a resolution with his Miami Beach council. Unanimous resolution. Toki should go home.
Y él mandó una carta, el mayor, que en ese momento era Philippe Lepine, al county, o sea, para que una resolución diciendo que Lolita tenía que ir, pero unfortunately we didn't have lucky, but still we fighting for Lolita. Estamos luchando todavía. Y lo que me preguntaste de la causa de Lolita, la Nación Lumi estaba protestando con el totem pole en uno de esos eventos que ellos tienen, que hacen siempre para reclamar por sus tierras, por sus derechos, y una niña le comentó a una señora los sueños que estaba teniendo sobre Lolita, que recibía llamados en los sueños, que decía que quería ir a casa por ayuda. Entonces se empezó a preocupar esta mujer y dice, no, te tengo que llevar a acercarte con los miembros de la Nación Lume para contarle esta historia. Y esta señora llevó a esta niña a ese evento y lo puso en contacto con uno de los miembros de la Nación Lumi. Y cuando le contaban la historia, no entendía nada, él no podía creer que había una orca en el Miami Sicario en cautiverio y que era de la tierra y de las aguas de la Nación Lumi, no sabían ellos. Cuando empezaron a investigar, se dieron cuenta que sí, que era así. Entonces, ¿qué pasó? Llevaron este esfuerzo al Parlamento de la Nación Lumi, ya que es como un Estado independiente, es como el Vaticano de la Nación Lumi. Ellos tienen sus propias reglas, sus propias aguas, su propia jurisdicción. Y discutieron esto en el Parlamento. Y fue aprobado. Y ahí empezó la lucha. Empezaron a construir el totem pole, ustedes vieron el carpintero y todo eso. And explaining Howard about the fight, about this girl, the little girl that brought that she said she was getting a call from Turkey.
Yes.
Just calling for help. Let me go home. And this woman brought this little girl, to the Lami people and just brought this story about her dream. And that from that day, Lami Nation started fighting for Lolita because of this little girl message.
Yes.
Y así fue la historia, así fue como empezaron ellos, y se dieron cuenta que tenían que luchar por Lolita. That's why it's a sacred obligation. They need to bring Lolita home. Por eso que para ellos es una obligación sagrada, y la tienen que traer, porque fue robada, es parte de su familia. She is part of her cultural heritage, so they need to bring Lolita home. It's a sacred obligation. Obligación sagrada.
That's
Yes.
very true.
Very true.
Así que no es algo llevado por abogados, sino por
It's
ellos.
a wonderful story. And Alejandro, what Lolita mean to you? How did you start this fight for her?
I started in 2014, 2015. I did many things, TV stations, radio stations, documentaries. We create a song for Lolita, a book now with the story of Lolita. I don't have any money from this. I don't make any profit. Just I do everything because really I love Lolita. Empecé en el 2014, 2015 y fui a los canales de televisión, a las radios, cuando supe la historia de Lolita, que le mataron la familia y de qué forma fue capturada y todo lo que le hicieron. Yo dije, no, tengo que empezar a luchar y hacer algo más. No solamente mantenerme con un cartel ahí en el Sea Aquarium, porque no es suficiente, hay que hacer algo más. Y por eso de ahí decidí hacer la lucha, ¿no? Llegar a la televisión, a la radio, y todo lo que vengo haciendo desde el 2014 hasta ahora, casi 7, 8 años. Y bueno, he conocido mucha gente, a Howard, a actores, gente que se ha unido a la causa, ¿no? Entonces, digamos, y siento que finalmente estamos muy cerca de conseguir el objetivo. I feel, Howard, that we are just very close to achieve this goal. I feel deeply into my heart that we are very close to achieve this goal, and Lolita Tokita Scarlett Chactena will go back home. Va a ir pronto a su hogar ella, y el nombre Scarlett Chactena, se lo digo, es el bautizo que le ha dado la Nación Lumi, el nuevo nombre que tiene, porque Scali es la ciudad del Puget Sound, donde fue robada Lolita. Por eso el nombre para ellos último es Scarlett Chactena. No es el nombre Lolita que le dio el Sea Aquarium, no es el nombre Lolita, es Scarlett Chactena. Y en realidad el nombre original de Lolita era Tokitai, que significa, como dijo Howard, nice colors, bright colors, colores bonitos, significa, Tokitai. So,
Yeah.
Con eso te digo todo el activismo, y bueno, y realmente se vienen cosas muy buenas para las orcas, para Lolita. Tenemos que rezar mucho que ella salga, y que yo pienso que ella es una guía, ella es una elegida, ella es una elegida, para que ella le abra la puerta a las otras orcas. Así que esa es la respuesta. She's a warrior, she's an angel, and she will come home and she will open the door to other orcas, I think, Howard.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, we feel the same.
Very much the same
sí,
way.
Lo mismo.
Yes, she will. She has it in her. She's a strong whale, and we have a moment in history, combination of economics and public opinion that are going to make her come home very soon, I think. Yes.
Thank you. We are coming to the end of this Congress. We have a last question for you, Alejandro, and it's to ask you a message for all the activists for marine animals in captivity. What would you say to them? Continue this fight to don't lose the hope. What would you tell them, to the activists?
If you love animals, just continue the fight, but there is one thing we need to know, like you can keep fighting, protesting, but if we don't have the help from the government, we're going to be hard for achieving any goal. I don't know, Howard, I think you agree with me. If the government doesn't help, it's like we are in the same place.
Very true.
We can't move anywhere.
Very true. And the government relies on information. They want to know how the people feel, but they also want to make responsible decisions. And so they have to know that it's the right thing to do, that it's safe, that they won't look bad if they do that. So we have to reassure them that it is the right thing, it is safe, and they will be happy that they did that.
Y ustedes fíjense que ahora, en estos momentos, tenemos a la alcaldesa de Miami, Levin, a la comisionado Regalado, y tenemos ayuda del gobierno. Por eso le estoy diciendo, si no tenemos esta ayuda, no podemos hacer nada. Like I say, Howard, now Lolita has a lot of awareness now. We got the help from the Levin Cava, the Regalado, the commissioner. It's the only way that these animals can leave these facilities. If not,
they're wonderful.
We are done.
They are wonderful to give her so much support, from the mayor and the commission offices. They are really helping the cause and bringing people together, and they're doing wonderful things. Very thankful for them.
We have the plan. We have the plan for her rehabilitation. We have the donor that he's helping with the money.
Yes.
And plus we got the lamination, of course, we'll take care of Lolita until the end. If she can get released into the sea because, she is not capable to do that, she will live happily and with freedom in a sanctuary, But at least she will feel, she will feel the marine, the current marine, the sea, the environment, the whales around, gonna be amazing. Al menos ella va a estar en cautiverio, pero por lo menos va a estar con las orcas que nadan alrededor. Si no, puede ser rehabilitada por ella misma y tener la capacidad para llegar por sí misma al océano, a estar con su familia. Ella va a ser alimentada de por vida y la nación Lumi va a cuidar de ella hasta que muera en ese santuario. Está todo preparado ya para que sea así. Es su familia, no la van a dejar morir. No, como Kaiko. Like Kaiko, no. Lumination will take care of Lolita until she passes away. And how many years, Howard? ¿Cuántos años más tiene? Para 30, 40 años, 30, 40 years more.
20 to 40, yeah.
Yeah. How old is Lolita's ocean son? He's about 95 years old.
About 90 to 95, and she's fine. She's swimming 100 miles every day with her family.
La mamá de Lolita tiene 95 años y Lolita tiene 52. Le quedan 30, 40 años, pero para vivir en libertad. Lolita is 52, so maybe has 20, 30 years more ahead. 30 años por delante le queda. Así que tenemos al activista, los activistas tienen que seguir para adelante. Listen, los activistas tienen que seguir para adelante. Tarde o temprano, sooner or later, we're gonna open the door. Sooner or later. You see what happened?
Yes.
How many years Howard has been fighting for Lolita? So long. Even Howard used to hold a sign in front of the sea aquarium long time ago when he started activism. Long time ago now, he's the Washington State, But he did this in the beginning. Everybody did. So we have to keep going. We have to keep going.
Yes.
And sooner or later, we're going to achieve this goal. Tenemos que seguir para adelante, no bajen los brazos, que tarde o temprano las cosas llegan. Como le digo siempre a ustedes, if Lolita goes home, maybe another orcas will go home. We never know in the future, maybe Jamaica too. You know, Howard, maybe Howard and I, maybe we can, Howard and I, maybe we can travel to Argentina. Howard will do a conference, big conference in a stadium. We never know. We never know.
I'd love it.
Yeah. We have to be positive. We have to be positive. Keep fighting. See.
Yes,
Please,
you have the
please.
message. You
Please
have
come
the
here.
education.
We did the book. We did music. We did activism. We did documentaries. Blackfish, Lolita Slave to Entertainment to bring awareness. So we did many things, but we never lost the hope. And now it seems like Lolita will get released. So it's good. It's good. So keep going. Never give up. Never give up. Because if you give up, they will die. They don't have a voice. They are voiceless. They don't have a voice. We are the only hope that they have. La única esperanza somos nosotros.
Thank you, Alejandro. You have the message. You have the education to tell people. Yes.
Okay. I think that we're ready to go.
You inspire us a lot, as well as Howard. Thank you so much. It was so powerful message. We are coming to an end. Thank you so much, Howard and Alejandro, for making this Congress possible, and for all your amazing job for Lolita, Scaling Tactana, and Togite. I would like to invite the people who are watching us to visit the website of Orca Network and the social media of Alejandro Dintino. See you soon in our next International Congress about marine animal rights with more special guests. We are so close to Toki's freedom. We know she would be the first in opening the doors to other captive orcas, and they deserve that. As human beings, our responsibility is to correct the mistake we have committed by putting them in captivity, to repair the damage this has caused in their life. We are working to give this world the last generations of animals in captivity, and to end the marine shows, and to eventually close these animal exploitation centers such as aquariums and zoos. We have a video to finish. Thank you, everyone.